hold on to your butts. This might be a long one. So, grab something to eat. Do something while you listen. Hang some clothes. Maybe do some homework. Regardless, even if you just want to look at the squiggly lines and whatever image I decided to put in the background, please enjoy this longish video, cause it's very close to my heart. I'm gonna talk about one of the most important things in my life, and that's tabletop role-playing games. It's my favorite pastime. It's one of my favorite things to do in my whole life. So I'm gonna talk today about starting out playing tabletop role-playing games. See, in the beginning, I had seen Dunces and Dragons from Dexter's Lab, I think. It was a fun episode. It taught me that there was a game out there that you play with books, with a Game Master shield, different dice, where people would play different characters that they would come up with. And somebody would dictate everything that they would do. And I remember thinking to myself, oh, that looks cool. I would love to try something like that someday. And eventually, many years later, I did. Back in the day, we had a store called Borders. It was my favorite store of all time. They had books in there. They also had really good soup. Yeah, I went to the cafeteria area. And they had some bread bowls with really good chili sometimes and broccoli soup. It was amazing. The best thing they had, also baklava. I love baklava, and it was delicious. But the best item they had in the cafeteria was pear smoothies. Those pear smoothies would make my cheeks tremble and quench. It was amazing. Then they closed, and I was sad because no more pear smoothies for me. Not at least the way they make them. So how good they were. I still remember. Makes my mouth water a bit. But regardless of, I saw a couple of D&D books, specifically Dungeons and Dragons and Borders. And I was always drawn to the monster manuals. I'm like, ooh, monsters. I love monsters. Monsters are awesome. And I would look at the pictures. Then next to the pictures, I saw a bunch of numbers with plus signs and parentheses and something called AZ. I was confused. But I paid not much attention to it. I just liked to look at the pictures. Should have read the entries for the monsters, but I didn't know they had entries. I just thought that it was all rules. Then many years later, I got to college, and I had my first interaction with Dungeons and Dragons, with tabletop role-playing games, about a month into my college career. First month. There was an area in college where all the weird people would hang out. And there I saw a lot of people had pushed about 3 tables together. And the first thing I thought a pussycat. Anyways, the first interaction I ever saw was a game master with over 8 players in their table. Over 8 players. That should have been a red flag, but I didn't know any better. And I know a lot of people like to play games with a bunch of players, but it's not my cup of tea. It's never been my cup of tea. I tried it once. I'll get in that much later when I start talking about my game mastering career. But too many players, no thanks. So one of the first things I saw is the game master describing that one of the player characters had killed another player character. And no one seemed to care. I was confused because I thought this game was about teamwork, overcoming obstacles together, talking down a sphinx, fighting monsters, getting a lot of gold, getting weapons, saving the girl, saving the world, killing God at the end. But nobody seemed to care that one of the player characters had killed another player character. And I was confused. Later on, I learned what had happened. One of the players had the Eye of Vecna. For those of you that don't know, the Eye of Vecna is a very powerful artifact. You take out your eye, you put that eye in, and you get a bunch of powers. But Vecna was an evil lich. A lich is an undead with a lot of spellcasting power. An undead wizard, a very powerful undead wizard, if you will. And he had the Eye of Vecna. And he told the other player, let's train. 'Cause if someday I turn evil because of the eye, you must kill me. So I get it, they were doing the whole epic thing that I might turn evil, so you must stop me. Sure, commendable. I've seen that many times in many series and movies. Not one of my favorite tropes. Not something I would do in my own games, but sure. To each their own. So as the story goes that I heard was that they took off all their magic gear so they would spar with regular weapons, mundane weapons. And the player with the Eye of Vecna decided to use one of his legacy weapons. Now, for those of you that don't know, a legacy weapon is a weapon that is extremely powerful that levels up with you. So the other player that had no magical gear whatsoever got struck down with an extremely powerful sword. They died instantly. And the game master tells them, this player killed this player. And I clearly remember one of the players saying, yeah, so what? So what are you telling me? They didn't care. They did not care. That whole group had a bunch of issues with that. They were literally, most of them, munchkins. For those of you that don't know, munchkins are people that would try to get powerful in a game to the detriment of other players. You don't want to play with a munchkin, unless of course everybody's being a munchkin. Or you're playing the munchkin board game, which is really fun. But there was a lot of brouhaha happening in that table. There are many stories that I heard. I always looked at the gaming. I always looked at them gaming. Sorry. I was interested. I wanted to know about this game that they were playing that I had seen in Dexter's Lab, that I had read about a little bit in Borders. I wanted to be there. Of course, I remember one day, one guy had come in. He was new at the game. He had made a character. He had made good aligned character. I don't like alignments myself. More on that in another video, eventually. My history with tabletop role-playing games is pretty extensive, with a lot of strange and bad stories. Bad in the sense that it was bad what happened to me, but good for you because it makes for good listening. So, in this story, this new guy had come in. He was trying to help them out. The villain had hidden away inside some towers, and one of the players, cleric, used a spell that destroyed the whole area. That player killed the new guy. That player character also killed the bad guy, but also killed the new guy's character. And then the player says, I can revive you, because I have revival magic. But don't worry, after I do, you'll pay me for the diamond. For those of you that don't know, usually in D&D, you need diamonds to bring people back from the dead. So, that player killed the new guy, and then told the new guy that they were gonna charge them for the diamond, for resurrecting them after they had killed him. The guy refused and left the game. But I always was there looking at them gaming because I was intrigued. I wanted to play. Eventually, one of the other players in there, one of the ones that was not a munchkin, wanted to start their own game. And they were going around asking for players. And I was like, ooh, I want to play. I've never played before. They asked me if I had played before. I said, no. I've never played in my life, but I've always wanted to. It seems interesting. Nobody sat down with me to explain anything. Not really. I just had a book shoved into my face. They said, here's the player's handbook. Read it. Make a character. I was appalled a bit because it was daunting. So many rules to read. Eventually, somebody explained a little bit about each class. And I'm like, okay. It was Dungeons & Dragons 3.5 edition. Back in the day, my favorite game of all time, but it was my first game. Usually, you're biased towards it. I've noticed because usually people that like 4th edition is their first game. 4th edition D&D. And 4th edition D&D, it's not a very good game. At least in my perspective. So I read a little bit about the different character classes. I didn't want to be a wizard or a sorcerer because at the time, I thought that magic was sort of lame. And a bit overtly complicated. For reasons I'll get into in another video. I just really hate Vancian spellcasting. I find it stupid and lame. But more on that eventually. I didn't think Rangers and Druids seemed very cool. Rangers had an animal with them. I'm like, okay. They're like a pet class. I had played a little bit of World of Warcraft back then. And druids could turn into animals, and I'm like, not really interested. I forget, I hadn't played World of Warcraft. I just had known a little bit about it, now that I remember. Clerics, I was atheist at the time. And I'm like, clerics, hell no, I don't want to think about gods. It's escapism. I want to escape gods, that's what I want to do. Paladins, even less. They had a really bad rep in college. It's like, everybody called them lawful stupid. Sometimes you hear about those tropes, those jokes, and you don't think they happen, but they really do. In college, everybody called paladins lawful stupid. They have a stick up their ass. That's what everybody would tell me. You're gonna be no fun if you play a paladin. You have to be good. You have to be a goody-goody two-shoes. And I'm like, no thanks. So I didn't play a paladin. Originally, I wanted to play a rogue. Because rogues sounded cool. They had a bunch of skills. They could be sneaky, but they could be also good at talking. They have a bunch of abilities. They had sneak attacks, so they could deal a lot of damage in combat, but be really good outside combat as well. So I thought this class has everything. Minus spellcasting. I don't like spellcasting, so it's the best class for me. But someone else was known in college for playing rogues, and I didn't want to be compared. Sure, you might think it's stupid, but I was a teenager. I was just 16 years old back then, in college. Yeah, big brain on this boy. So I didn't want to be compared to the guy that everybody knows for being a rogue. So I just didn't pick a rogue. Big mistake on my behalf, honestly. So I ended up picking up a fighter, because barbarians seemed to be too brutish the way people sold them to me. Oh, you're a barbarian, you go crazy and you kill things. And I'm like, I don't want to be crazy. Of course, nowadays I know you can be a barbarian without being, a barbarian. You can just be a guy with a battle rage. But you can be a sophisticate outside. Of course, back in 3.5, I think they were illiterate. Or that was in 3rd basic edition. I forget at the moment. I didn't even look at the bard because I thought bard was stupid because they sang. And that's all they could do. Of course, the reality is much different, but the way the person that described the classes to me sold them to me, you sing and you buff people. And I'm like, I don't want to be a buff spellcaster. That's lame. I want to kill things. I want to kill monsters. That's what I want to do. But it was a big mistake because the fighter, no matter what anybody tells you, at least in 3.5 or in 3rd edition D&D, is not a good starting class. It's not. If you really think that fighter is a good starting class, you've really never played a fighter. Or you are blind to the reality. See, the fighters get something called feats every other level. Fighter feats that modify their combat. Every other level, they get regular feats. So you get feats up the wazoo. Feats every single level. And feats, it's a large table with a lot of different things that can modify your character in many different ways. And fighter feats affect every single way you do combat. So you can do a lot of things other people can do, so you have to study them by yourself. It's not just bonuses, it's just things you can do. And then we get to the supplements. More feats, more options. See where I'm going with this? It's too much. Even if you keep it at base core book, it's too much for a new player. So everybody goes with the same thing. Weapon focus, power attack. That's what I had when I started out, because that's what they sold me on. Oh, there's a lot of things you can pick, but for starting off, just pick weapon focus and power attack. And that was it. So there it was. A fighter with weapon focus and power attack. That's all I had, because I didn't know any better. Nobody wanted to sit down with me and actually explain things to me. They just wanted me to read the whole book. And one day, so we could start playing the next. Yeah, that all happened one day. And one afternoon, actually. And I made my character. My first character, sadly, was chaotic neutral. And I played him like a total asshole for the most part. Sure, it's cringe. But I was young. I didn't know any better. I thought I was being edgy. I thought I was being cool. I finally had a group of people that liked same things that I did. Yeah, I was a loser growing up. I was bullied. as many of you probably were. But I was finally home, I thought to myself. Little did I know, I was in for a world of disappointment after that. Disappointment after disappointment because, sadly, promoting the stereotypes, geeks tend to be broken people. I consider myself there because I am very, very antisocial. I don't like meeting new people. I don't like getting out of the house. I do it when I have to, of course, because I may be antisocial, but I'm very, very, very functional. I have to be for the job I have. I have to work with a lot of different people every single day. And they tell me that I am pretty damn good at my job. I sometimes like to consider myself one of the best in the region that I'm at. But then again, with so much praise I get constantly at my job, it's difficult not to think so. So yeah, you'll learn in the next coming videos once I feel like talking more about my past experiences as a player and then my experiences as a game master. It's been just constant heartache, heartbreak, and disappointment. But yeah, that was the game. That was my first game. First scene, I was trying to shoot the scenery because I was so happy. I was so damn happy that I was finally playing Dungeons and Dragons. I was finally playing that game I had seen many years ago in Dexter's Laboratory. I was like a fat kid with a giant chocolate cake. Yeah, I made that joke now. If you don't like it, I'm very sorry. The game ended in nothing. Everybody there was used to playing homebrew games, where the game master would make up the story, usually the world as well. But the game ended in nothing. Our game master had a large group as well. It was his first time running a game. But they had decided that they wanted a large group for their first game. I, for one thing, that's a big mistake that I sadly repeated the first time I ran a game. They had a large group. Few sessions later, the team split up. I think one player had a problem with another player. Maybe. Not entirely sure. Nobody ever told me why one player broke off from the group. But I didn't like the other people. I really didn't like any of them. Cause if you think me being a chaotic neutral fighter cringy, trying to be an edgelord, trust me, everybody else was much, much worse. With their tragic backstories, with the people that had stolen from them, all of them being orphans. At least my character was looking for his dad. He was in a different continent, but it was actually something he really wanted to do. And I had written in my backstory that my father actually wanted to meet my character, so it was something I had planned on. So it was not all tragedy. Sure, my character's mother had died, but at least he has his dad to look forward to. He tried to be happy-go-lucky, even though I was a bit of an edgelord when I was a teenager. But everybody else, they stole from me, they killed my parents, I grew up alone in the streets. Everybody was like that. So one of the characters, who was a paladin, broke off from the group. And I'm like, he's a paladin, so I could play a nicer character. I want to go with him. I told the game master I had missed the session because it's college, so I was in class. I missed the session. And I told the game master, they split up, I don't want to go with the rest of the group. Why? They asked me, and I told them. I wasn't truthful, of course. I didn't tell them I hate these people. I wasn't going to tell them I am extremely antisocial and I don't like people, even though that my favorite pastime needs a lot of people to run properly, betterly. You catch my drift. So I went with the solo player. We had a lot of fun in a lot of different sessions. We actually had a lot of character development when we sat down with a glass of wine and we talked in character about our aspirations. It was really fun. We eventually had a wizard join us. So it was me, a chaotic neutral fighter with a reach weapon, a lawful good paladin, and a lawful neutral wizard. That was the team, and we liked it like that. We had a lot of plans about a lot of things we wanted to do, but the game was cancelled. Why? Because the game master just decided that they were going to cancel the game. Eventually, I'm going to come up with a nickname for this game master, because they're going to come back. And almost every time they come back with a different game, it's a game that at some point, they canceled. It's just canceled game after canceled game after canceled game after canceled game. Got to the point that I was that game master's only player. But more on that eventually. For now, so you know, my first experience as a player was a really shitty one. Because I was having fun and then suddenly the fun stopped. No reason as to why. It just ended. And I was confused. I never understood it. I wanted to keep playing. Eventually, I'll tell you more about the other college experience I had playing more games and after college. But that's much more later on, once I gather my thoughts, actually sat down to write it, and decide to tell you about it. My dear listener, you like it when I whisper to you? Yeah, I bet you do. I am the voice in the void, reminding you, I'm always watching.